G'day there guys, homeowners associations, can't live with them, can't live without them, maybe you can. Find out on today's episode of r/JustnoHOA. Now with that said, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn to the barbie, and get ready for the content. Let's go. Posted by user NoProperty6122, titled, I suspect HOA embezzle insurance money and put it in their own pockets. Hi guys. I'm asking for suggestions or solutions regarding my current situation. My condo was damaged very bad from water burst caused by fire that happened in May last year. The fire was deemed an accident. And to perform restoration, all drywalls and appliances were removed from my unit. My insurance just covered part of the rent, which was $8,000, and the rest of the rent's $10,650 till now, or any appliance damages were not covered. We waited for almost 6 months to hear from the HOA insurance. According to the emails, checks with a total of $2.9 million were issued to the HOA. At first, the HOA provided 2 options, which was either using designated contractors or hiring my own with their insurance money. In both options, they will provide basic repairs, including drywall installation, electrical and plumbing, since city inspection was required. I anticipated their contractors will delay work, so I picked option 2 and plan to have my own contractors. I assumed they will perform the basics once the agreement was received and confirmed. However, I never got any updates, and for the whole month nothing happened in my unit. So I called the management company hired by the HOA and asked why they hadn't started. The excuse was without homeowners' consent and instruction, they could not touch any unit. But I signed and returned the agreement. By default, they should start drywall installation, plumbing, and electrical first for me, no matter what. To have the work started sooner, I was forced to switch from option 2 to 1. At the same time, the HOA asks for a monthly increased HOA fee of $150 on top of $400 due to their increased insurance premium. To avoid a lien against our units, we just have to pay the higher amount without any choice. When I was expecting my worry-free days, I found out their contractors had extremely long timelines. They can only do one thing the whole month, for example, drywall installation in the first month and painting in the second month. For remodeling work like this, it'll only take a maximum 3 weeks based on other homeowners' experience. When I asked the PM why it took so long, they always threw different excuses. For example, not getting money or approval from insurance, hard to get supplies during the pandemic, etc. So I contacted their insurance carrier, and the adjuster confirmed $3.6 million were issued for this claim, but he refused to provide email and paper confirmation and evidence for this claim. I know for a fact the money is in the HOA and management's accounts based on the adjuster and the emails. I'm worried if I confront them with this info, I will get retaliated or a new excuse. My unit has been vacated for over a year, and I'm still paying high HOA fees and mortgage, but getting no rents. Also having the fear of not getting the work done and not getting my money back by the end of this year. I wasn't able to find any organizations but courts in California which can supervise and monitor HOAs. Now the question is, what should I do? Anyone care to share similar experience? Thanks for reading. Now in the comments, Renimus says, this is time to contact an attorney, not Reddit. Immediately, because it almost sounds like they're trying to stall you out past the point you can sue. And OP replies, but I don't have enough evidence. Is it a sure win case? And Renimus replies, you're not suing for embezzlement, you're suing for them not doing anything, and to know where the money went. Talk to an attorney, explain the situation, and they will explain what you can do. Thanks. Anytime. Remember, you don't need all the evidence, you need a case. The attorney can get you the evidence that you need, and legally. And having one show up gets people in line quickly, even without the lawsuit sometimes. The embezzlement will come out during the discovery phase of the breach of contract suit. Chad T. 41 says, one claim like that shouldn't raise the rates like that for a property. It may go up slightly, but not demanding of $150 per unit increase. Source, This is exactly what I do for a living, on the restoration side. I'm not following your logic chain of big damage claim paid into contractor organized and hired, into contractor work timeline is slow, into embezzlement. Your association financials are likely audited and available monthly by request. I would start there to understand what checks have been both received and cut around insurance and repairs to validate the increase in assessments, and if the costs quoted match costs paid, as construction labor is pretty scarce and expensive these days. Yeah, I audit HOAs for a living. I was really confused too by the logic here of suggesting embezzlement. If the association received $3.6 million in insurance funds, it would be extremely easy to trace. OP, just ask for the monthly financial package. You will likely either see a liability account called something like Insurance Settlement Funds that will contain the remaining amount of the funds to be used on repairs and paid out to the owners, or in this case, since it was such a large claim, they probably created a third fund called Reconstruction Fund that contains all the cash from the claim and separate accounts for the expenses. Can't comment on the repair delays, but from what I've seen, big reconstruction projects often take a few years to be fully completed. And our next post is by user TalonCard815, titled, "I don't care what you are, you can't park in my spot." So, I'm a paramedic in a place that has some HOAs and apartment complexes. We hate responding to the apartment complexes because there's nothing but assigned parking and no fire zones. Basically, if we can't find a place to fit in, we have to block the road. My agency also uses first responder vehicles and ambulances. The first responder, as implied, usually arrives first, so we do our best to leave room for the ambulance to fit in. We get a call at the apartment complex, and I am in the first responder. As I pull up to the address by some miracle, there's a spot only 2 apartments away. Great, I can leave the road clear for the ambulance. As soon as I park, out comes this guy screaming I can't park there. I do the, "Are you serious?" look, and just say medical emergency. He says he doesn't care, I can't park there. Keep in mind my vehicle has enough lights to make a Christmas tree jealous. I just grab my stuff, lock the vehicle, and keep going. He is screaming that he's going to call the cops. I tell him they're already on the way, as they respond to medical emergencies. The cop gets there while I'm in with the patient and tells him basically to pound sand. The cop enters the apartment, and then this guy really goes full-blown entitled. He enters the apartment, comes into the room where I'm treating the patient. He then starts ranting and raving how I have to move my vehicle. I look at the cop and say, "Get him out of here." The cop then seals his fate. She asks the patient if she wants this person removed from the apartment, and did she ever give consent for him to enter. The patient's response? "Get him the F out of here, he's trespassing." Boom, the all clear. The cop gives him one last chance and tells him to leave or he will be arrested. He doubles down and says, "I'm on the HOA board, I can go where I please." At this point, backup is called. The cop at least manhandles him out of the room. The ambulance arrives with PD backup and they get him out of the apartment so we can safely remove the patient. Not entirely sure what happened next, as I was in the back of the ambulance, but when I got out, one of the officers approaches and says, "Sorry, but we need another bus. We had to tase him." Policy for PD is if they tase someone, they have to be transported to the hospital by ambulance, as the taser spikes have to be surgically removed due to the barbs on them. I wait for the second ambulance, they take him, and I go back in service. I found out a few weeks later he was charged with trespassing, assaulting an officer, resisting arrest, interference with government administration, aka interfering with the scene of an emergency, all over a parking space that I would have been in for all of 20 minutes if he hadn't created problems. I can only assume he took a plea deal, as I was never called to testify. Now in the comments, Make It Make Sense 30 says, "This is absolutely disgusting. It boils my blood when people don't even get out of the way on the road. I hope these people or their families never have to wait for emergency help. Then they will know how it feels in that scary situation instead of bitching over a parking spot. Some people need to get their priorities straight. He deserved to be tased. Barging into someone's apartment when they're vulnerable receiving medical treatment. What a jerk. Yeah. The worst thing for me is when I see people walking over a road when an ambulance is coming. The ambulance has to frickin' wait for them to cross. They could have waited the couple of seconds it would take for them to pass. The surprising thing is most of the time it's older folks. God, sometimes I hate people. It's rare I actually believe somebody who claims to be important somehow to defend bad behavior, but I totally believe this guy's on the HOA board. Seems exactly the type to look for that petty power. And no, he doesn't have the right to go where he wants. I feel bad for the residents who have to deal with his nonsense. Stories like this sound almost unbelievable unless you work in healthcare. I've legit had similar crap happen. We had a new admit show up, and at about the same time, a patient directly across the hall from her coded. So we're all in the middle of trying to revive this patient, and she keeps calling out, so I step out to see what she wants. She wants her pain medication. I explained to her that since she just got here, she doesn't have any orders in yet, and we've got a situation across the hall. It'll be a little while. She looks me dead in the eyes and says, I don't care who the F is dying, I want my pain medication now. 15 years in nursing, and I sat there shocked as hell, and I've seen about everything. Took me a few minutes to pick my jaw up and tell her that she'd have to wait, and she responded with, I want my doctor now. At this point, I was done with her, and told her that it was too bad, her doctor was running the code. She'd still have to wait. People think we make this crap up, but some of the crazy crap people say in hospitals in medical emergencies is really mind-blowing. The icing on this cake was she was joking about it the next night. She told the nurse, haha, you should be glad you weren't here last night. I was a real witch. Our next post is by user FlyingPigs3210, titled, My HOA has now broken into my storage locker in the basement and removed all of my belongings. So I've made a couple of posts about my HOA, which you can read in my history. But the latest ordeal is that they cut the lock off my storage unit, which is in the common area of the basement. I had some TV boxes, golf clubs, and camping gear in there with a padlock. I go down to put something in my storage unit and realize all of my belongings have been removed and there is a new thick chain and padlock attached to the now empty storage locker. There are other empty storage units which have no lock whatsoever. The previous owner left a vacuum and screens for the windows for me in the unit. The vacuum was removed, but the screens remain. Perhaps this was not my unit, but when I ask my board, I get no response to my emails. This is also the unit the previous owner told me is mine. There are now rules in the bylaws that say the board can relocate my storage unit. Is there any justification as to how this is not breaking and entering? Fortunately, nothing was stolen or damaged, so that's good. I'm starting to feel personally attacked and can't afford a lawyer and don't think I even have anything to go after them for, as nothing was damaged and I have no proof that it was the board who cut my lock and removed my belongings. Now in the comments, Doom Kitty of Doom says, pretty sure if they didn't contact you prior to cutting the lock about moving your stuff, or give notice and you didn't give them permission, that's theft. It was padlocked even though it was in a common area. It is a storage unit. The fact that they will not return your emails is troubling as well. You don't need to prove the HOA did anything. You just need to call the police and report the theft, because hey, maybe someone actually stole your stuff. If it was them, you'll find out pretty quick, I think. Edit to add, also if they moved your stuff due to some sort of emergency, they should have contacted you to tell you so, and where you can find your belongings. This, file a report with the police and let them handle it. The police caring about theft? That's a new one. If it's from a high-income area, they'll care. Plus, you aren't really relying on them to do anything. It's just pressure on the HOA. And also, if you start spreading the word around the neighborhood that you were the victim of a theft, then the HOA will take a notice in a hurry. They have a vested interest in keeping rumors of crime low in their neighborhood. OP needs to confirm that the locker is in fact theirs to use. If it's not, as much as it sucks, there's not much they can do, as it sounds like their stuff wasn't thrown out, just removed from the locker. Also, OP is in Chicago. The police aren't going to do frick about this. I believe there's an online portal to generate a report in case OP needs to take further legal action, but if they try calling, they'll be told it's a civil matter and won't get a squad car sent. And OP replies, "Yeah, CBD will laugh in my face if I call them. The HOA really has all this power that I can't do anything about until something really bad happens. At the end of the day, I just want to use my damn storage unit and not have to worry about it. Who cares about what you think they'll do? Seriously, it doesn't hurt to try, and like that, you'll have a paper trail. You ask us for advice and get stupid with us after we advise you to do something?" And OP replies, "You're exactly right. Thanks for putting it bluntly. I'll see what the police say. You already did everything possible and they don't respond. So now please tell us what the cops tell you. My local PD has the ability to file a report online. You should check yours out too. And if you can't, just call the non-emergency police number and report it. You should also put some cheap cameras inside or outside the unit so you can see who's doing what. Hopefully you can beat those idiots legally." Wait, you said your belongings have been removed, but that nothing was stolen? Where did they put your stuff? Where did the vacuum go? And OP replies, "Just out in the corner of the basement hallway. Super strange. Do you pay to rent the storage area?" "No, it's my property." So they've changed the door and prevented you access to your own property? Honestly, you could call the non-emergency police line and look into filing a report and see if they can back you up in cutting the chain the HOA put on. I feel like there's something illegal about preventing you access to your own property. Also, relocating your things may or may not still fall under the category of theft. If a joyrider gets out of the car they stole and leaves it on a random street, I'm fairly certain they still get charged with grand theft, among other charges. Our next post is by user LGM30G, titled, "HOA President called me yesterday to admit defeat on a 2-year-long legal battle." So I was an HOA president for the 10 years I lived my old home. To clarify, every other term, I would step aside, but the new president would have me perform all functions. They were more comfortable making the change on paper only. I bought my new home and made sure that it was in a voluntary association neighborhood. This was the case in my old neighborhood, and I'm very familiar with the differences from a mandatory HOA here in Florida. We were never given information on where to send dues, and there was never a dues drive where a rep would come to the door and ask for money. No newsletter, no accounting of funds, no communication. In 2020, I received a notice of lien on my home. So did all of the neighbors I asked. All 9 immediate neighbors that I asked, except one. He just built his home and joined the board. He stated that in 2019, they voted the HOA into mandatory status. I showed him that my deed has no HOA on it, and my closing paperwork shows a voluntary HOA. He's from California, and said that he was unsure of the legal merit of their tactic, since he's new here and to the board. But as the new secretary, he witnessed the end of the process insofar as the paperwork came back from their attorney and was filed as a now mandatory HOA. I got the board president information from him and contacted him. When I told the president this tactic is absolutely not legal, he told me they paid $6,000 to a reputable attorney and this is rock solid, and then hung up the phone. I brought my documents to his home and knocked on his door, and he said basically the same thing and shut the door in my face. He handled inquiries from my immediate neighbors in the same fashion. After lengthy discussions with my new neighbor/secretary, he left the board due to doubts of the merit of their measure. Then the entire board quit. A new board stepped in and got a 15-minute briefing from the old president. They continued to operate under the advice that we now have a legal, filed, binding mandatory HOA. I attended their first meeting and showed them precedent after precedent in Florida where this is not legal. They had already filed 48 new liens. Mine was one. As their first measure, they hired an attorney to pore over the whole filing of the HOA, and after $7,000 of expenses are told that every aspect of the HOA was out of compliance. The only legal thing about it is that the LLC filing is proper. They now have to rescind every document back to the originals from 1963 and start over, under the official advice that it will never be mandatory since it'll prove to be impossible. So they are reverting back to the original bylaws and CCR and vacating all liens, along with sincere apologies from the new board for the actions of the predecessors. I did not spend a dime. Oh, and there's no way I'm joining an HOA board. I will, however, bring copies of my vacated liens and those of my neighbors to the old president with a smile on my face. Now in the comments, Buzzy Bree says, "Glad you guys fought it. In Florida, if you want to take a voluntary or civic association to a mandatory, you have to have 100% owner approval, HOA. Good job." And OP replies, "Exactly. I suspect this is the case in nearly, if not all, states. Additionally, all neighbors I asked were never asked to vote on the measure. To our dismay, when I demanded the vote results on the proposal of 210 homes, there were 120 votes cast. Some of my immediate neighbors had voted yes, but now have liens. When confronted with the vote results, they only recall a singular interaction with an HOA door knocker asking to sign a petition to accept new board members. They all have the same recollection. They signed the petition without review. I was clearly not home, as I've never seen that petition, so the illegal approach they took was by disguise as well. Cheeky idiots. I would enjoy seeing them try to get stuff voted on now. I would probably send them a bill for my time, and then sue him in small claims court, even if they have immunity, just to make them sweat." And OP replies, "No doubt. The new board is trying to do the right thing. They inherited quite a crap show. They made this true first order of business immediately after they officially took their respective offices. In the end, they are my neighbors, and I don't want to stir a pot that doesn't need stirring." And just to end this episode off, posted by user I'mBack91 titled, an Ask Reddit post, "People in HOAs, what's the dumbest rule in your homeowners association agreement?" Now in the comments, Elbird says, "House in the neighborhood caught fire. Luckily everyone was okay, they had small children, but the fire burnt a hole in the side of the house. While waiting for it to be repaired, the family covered the hole with a blue tarp to prevent rain from getting in and causing more damage. The HOA fined them because the tarp was an eyesore. I'd replace it with an obnoxious flag. I'd paint it in rainbow colors. The HOA sucks." I remember a story about an HOA that told a resident he was not allowed to have a pickup truck because of the ban on work vehicles in the bylaws. There was no contractor or business sign on it. The truck was a personal vehicle. The HOA wouldn't budge. He went out and bought an old station wagon that he painted camouflage and stuck a picture in the back window of his brand new shiny pickup truck with a sign that said, "The HOA will allow me to have this car, but not this truck in my driveway." The bylaws were amended shortly to allow non-commercial pickup trucks. Now further down, Burr Guy 3 shares his account. "The fences on your property must all be the same color and match the adjoining fences of the neighbor's property. The community was planned single-family houses with fences between houses. Looking from the street, it went house, fence, house, fence, house. I was in the middle of the row and had a shared fence with both neighbors that each had their own color. I got a violation notice the same week I moved in. If I painted my fences to match each other, at least one of my neighbors wouldn't have matched theirs on either side. This would have sent a cascade of violations down the street." Question Fear says, "I actually live in a condo now with a pretty chill HOA. The worst place was actually when I lived in an apartment in a town that didn't allow overnight parking. I had to park like a quarter mile away in a municipal lot, but had to have the car moved by 8:30 a.m. Overnight guests had to be reported to the police so they didn't get ticketed. When I busted my knee and was on crutches, I had to get a letter from my doctor faxed to the police department in order to get special permission to park on the street near my place overnight. After having to play May I Have an Overnight Guest with the police, an HOA would have to be really nasty to be worse than that. Further down, Where's the Iguana says, my parents' HOA is stupid strict. Can't have any holiday decorations up past the first week of January. My mum pulled a Clark Griswold and broke her ankle falling off a ladder putting up decorations before the holidays, so a wreath was left on the front door longer than allowed. They got a letter with a picture and a threat of fine. A few summers later, and some of their neighbors decided to stick it to the man. They got a flock of plastic lawn flamingos and planted them in one of their yards. Whenever the HOA would send a letter, the flock migrated to another yard. Kept it up for about a month and a half. Surprisingly enough, this isn't the craziest prank that my parents have pulled. My dad is always scheming something, but I'm glad that you've enjoyed their antics. And El Mucho Ding Dong 69420 says, everyone in my neighborhood was fined for having dirty roofs. Seriously. They claimed that everyone's roofs were dirty and made the neighborhood look bad. It's not like they were covered in mold or anything. Hell, I don't know how a roof is even dirty, but 268 of 284 houses in my neighborhood were fined $75 for it. We found out later that the HOA president started a power washing business and likely just wanted to drum up some business. He was impeached because of it, and none of us ever paid the fines. Edit. I've replied in the comments with this a few times, but it should be noted, power washing asphalt shingles will ruin them. It strips them bare, and you'd have to replace them as a result. The HOA president's son conveniently owned a roofing company, which was one of the two that were approved by the HOA to work in the neighborhood. So after he would have ruined your roof and made money from that, you'd have to hire his son to replace your roof. Ooh, impeaching HOA board sounds like an excellent hobby when I win the lotto big time. Unfortunately, I can't live in an area with an HOA. I'm French and I grew up in Texas. My desire to behead figures of authority and my property rights would never agree with it. Edit 1, dang, y'all are some bloodthirsty dudes and dudettes. While I've got people still looking at this comment, I'd like to direct your attention to the fact that while we all agree HOA leadership members aren't people, teens and preteens are. Consider donating to a local youth suicide prevention fund, and if you don't believe in organized charities, do a good deed and buy someone struggling a burger. An act of kindness is just as important as dick slapping a nosy yuppie. Alright guys, that's the end of the video. Friendly reminder that I'm now posting daily on my second channel, Markee 2. If you want to laugh at memes with me, link is down in the description below. On phone, you just click that little arrow underneath the video. I also want to say thank you to all my channel members and Patreon subscribers. Your names are currently floating down the screen here, and I love to see all of you guys. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Thank you for supporting me. I really appreciate it. If you see yourself on screen, I want you to give yourself a big pat on the back for being amazing as always, and thank you for supporting me again. I do hope that you guys have a good day, night, sleep, whatever it is you're up to. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.